So, studying in the Book of Esther, which is famously known for the book of the Bible that God's not even mentioned in, I had like four takeaways that I got from it this time around. You know, they say that although it's known for the book that doesn't mention God, um, yet almost every chapter it demonstrates his presence, his providence, and it got me thinking: has anyone ever wondered if God is working when you can't see it? You feel distant from God, and of course the answer is yes, because God's silence doesn't equal God's absence. And in the beginning, and when the chapter starts or the book starts, it's God is working before we even knew we needed him. Queen Vashti is removed. Esther becomes queen, and Mordecai uncovers a plot against the king. I mean, these events, they seem unrelated at first, and then later we realize that God is actually positioning people before the crisis is ever even revealed. I thought that was an interesting way to look at it. And when you read it, you're like, this stuff just starts kind of like flying off the pages at you. And here in a second, I'm going to have you read a couple of verses for me as soon as I find it. Actually, can you read Esther chapter 2, 15 through 18?
Yep. When the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his own daughter, to go to the king, she asked for nothing except that Haggai, the king's eunuch, who had charge of the woman, advised. Now Esther was winning favor in the eyes of all who saw her. And when Esther was taken to King, and we just did this. We looked up the pronunciation of this.
Try it.
King Ahasuerus.
We'll go with it.
Or something like that. I always love whenever we do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we're prepping ahead of time.
You never know.
Into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is in the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the women, and she won grace and favor in his sight more than all of the virgins, so that he set the royal crown at her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a great feast for all his officials and servants. It is Esther's feast. He also granted remission of the taxes to the provinces and gave gifts with royal generosity.
Yeah, and so again, the first point, God is always working before we even know we need him. He's always a step ahead of the enemy, and I love that. The second thing I got from it is God uses ordinary events for extraordinary things. Here's some examples I wrote down. A beauty contest, a forgotten act of loyalty, and we have a king who can't sleep, a perfectly timed banquet. And what appears to be coincidence is actually God's providence. Esther, Mordecai, Haman is our big people that are involved in this book. And when the king can't sleep, it just reminds me of, what's the song, Even When I Don't See Him, He's Working. Mm-hmm. God is working the good out for his people, right? And this is a redemption story, and this is what saves the Jewish people for what comes next. And it's just, yes, it's a book of love, and it's a book of God showing up. But again, God's not even mentioned in this, but he's granting Esther favor. Can you do Esther 6, 1 through 3? Because what I love about this section is this is the night the king can't sleep. So obviously, God is stirring something in his heart or in his spirit that's keeping him restless. Whenever you're ready.
On the night the king could not sleep, and he gave orders to bring the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was written how Mordecai had told about Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold, and who sought to lay hands on King Aretas. And the king, what honor or distinction has been bestowed on Mordecai for this? The king's young men who attended him, saying, nothing has been done for him.
So, again, he's troubled, can't sleep.
Yep.
Remembers, hey, I'm going to do something productive. Brings out this book. Oh, Mordecai.
Wait a second.
Uncovered that plot. I need to honor him.
Which that plot was all the way back. It was right after.
The plot is back in chapter 2.
It was right after she became the queen.
Mm-hmm. And then the third point, the third takeaway for me was faith trusts God before the outcome is known. And I had to write this part down. When Mordecai challenges Esther, he says, who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther responds, if I perish, I perish. And all that tells you is that faith obeys before it even understands. If God says go, and I have the faith of that mustard seed that Jesus talks about in the New Testament, just go. The outcome isn't up to you. The destination isn't up to you. It's you being faithful for whatever journey God has placed you on or us on. And that was like, man, if I perish, I perish.
It's one of those so be it moments.
Yeah. But faith obeys before it understands. And then the final point that I had was, when we look back, it reveals God's hand. There was a great reversal. So we have at the beginning, we have a queen removed and then a new queen. But here we see God reversing everything that the enemy took away from him. So Haman's plan fails. Mordecai's promoted. The Jewish people are delivered. And Purim is established. God's plan always becomes clear in hindsight because he's the Alpha and the Omega. He's the great I am. And there's some supporting, a couple of supporting verses. I love the one in Ephesians. It's chapter 1, verse 11. God works out all things according to his purpose. Mm-hmm. And as we've seen, which it's Xerxes was the king of Persia. I hope I'm not butchering that. At the time, was not a man following God. He had a different religion and different gods. But yet God still used him to save his people and to deliver his people because he allowed them he changed the decree. So in Persia, once a king made a decree, it couldn't be revoked even by the king. So Xerxes made a new decree. I just said it like 6 times and I lost it. Made a new one that the Jewish people could now defend themselves. And it's again, God, Genesis 50:20. God intended for good what others meant for evil, but he still works things out for his purpose and for his design and his plans. And we have to realize it's not our plans and our designs. We're just the instrument. We're the tool in the potter, the clay in the potter's hands. And then upon reflection, when it's, when life feels uncertain and it's dark and we don't know what's going on, God's still working. God's in control. We already know the end of the battle, the story. We win. Doesn't mean it's not going to get bumpy along the way, but it is something that we remind ourselves that God is still keeping his promises. And even when we can't see his hand, trust that he's working. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes through a different season of life.